Darren Miller had always prided himself on never asking for directions, which turned out to be a problem when you were hauling 15,000 tons of agricultural equipment through uncharted space. He stared at his co-pilot, eyes narrowed. What do you mean we're lost? How can we be lost? And you better not say we're lost in space. We're not going to be like that terrible three-season show that made no sense, or even worse, that movie with that guy from Friends. Tommy grabbed the edge of his console as the freighter shuddered. Okay, first of all, that show was pretty good until season 3. Second, we are definitely lost. We have a nav computer. Darren gestured at the blinking display that currently showed what looked like a very confused question mark where their coordinates should have been. It cost more than my house. Your house is a trailer. A nice trailer. Tommy pulled up the star charts and spun them around. Look, all I'm saying is that none of these constellations match anything in our database. We jumped through what we thought was the Cascade Gate near Proxima, and instead we ended up here. Wherever here is. Darren leaned back in his seat, which groaned under the weight of too many truck stop burritos. Did you check the jump coordinates before we went through? Of course, I checked them. Did you double-check them? Tommy's silence spoke volumes. Tommy, in my defense, I was very tired and also watching that new show about the singing competition with the dogs. Before Darren could properly express his feelings about his co-pilot's life choices, the communications panel lit up with an incoming hail. The universal translator kicked in with a series of clicks and whistles that resolved into a high-pitched voice. Unidentified vessel, this is Patrol Cruiser Bright Talon of the Concorde. You have entered restricted space. State your business or be vaporized. Darren and Tommy looked at each other. That seems excessive, Tommy said. Darren hit the transmit button. Hello there, Bright Talon. This is the independent freighter Rusty Pelican. We're just passing through. Hauling some tractors, definitely not here to cause any trouble. There was a pause. Tractors. Farming equipment, for growing food. Another pause, longer this time. You are hauling devices for agricultural cultivation. That's what I said. Through the forbidden zone. The what now? The view screen flickered to life, revealing what Darren could only describe as a very angry bird. Well, not exactly a bird. More like if someone had taken a parakeet, made it 6 feet tall, gave it 4 arms, and then really annoyed it about something. I am Commander Trillix, the alien announced, its feathers ruffling in what was probably the universal sign for barely contained rage. You have violated Concord law by entering the forbidden zone with contraband materials. Tommy leaned over. I don't think tractors are contraband. You're not helping, Darren muttered. He turned back to the screen. Look, Commander, we don't want any trouble. We just took a wrong turn at the jump gate. If you could point us toward the nearest human trade route, we'll be out of your feathers. Your species has a phrase, Trillix said slowly, about the consumption of certain foods and their consequences. Eat it and find out, Tommy suggested. You have eaten it, Trillix continued, ignoring him. You will now find out. The transmission cut off. That sounded bad, Tommy said. Why do you always state the obvious? It's a gift. The rusty Pelican shook as the patrol cruiser locked a tractor beam onto them. Darren tried firing the engines, but it was like trying to drive away while an elephant sat on your trunk. Not that he'd ever tried that, but he imagined it felt similar. We're being pulled in, Tommy announced, monitoring the readouts. I can see that. Just saying. 20 minutes later, they found themselves in the docking bay of what appeared to be a massive space station. Darren had seen a lot of stations in his 15 years of hauling cargo across the galaxy. But this one looked like someone had taken a fancy hotel and mated it with a military base, and then painted the whole thing an aggressive shade of purple. A boarding ramp extended toward their airlock. Should we go meet them? Tommy asked. Do we have a choice? Not really. They grabbed their sidearms, which were mostly for show since Darren was a terrible shot and Tommy once fired at a space pirate and hit a fire extinguisher instead. They stepped out into the docking bay where Commander Trillix waited with a dozen guards, all carrying weapons that looked unnecessarily complicated. Welcome to Station Perch, Trillix said, spreading all 4 arms wide. You are under arrest. For what? Darren asked. Smuggling, trespassing, and general human nonsense. That last one isn't a real crime. It is now. We made it a law 3 cycles ago after the last human ship came through. Tommy perked up. There are other humans here. Were, Trillix corrected. They are currently serving time in a labor camp for attempting to sell something called hot dogs to the vegetarian delegates of the Outer Rim Council. That does seem insensitive, Darren admitted. They were escorted through the station, which was bustling with aliens of every conceivable shape and size. Darren saw what looked like a floating jellyfish arguing with a rock creature about docking fees. A group of insectoid beings were clustered around a food vendor selling something that smelled like burnt rubber and old socks. Your cell. Trillix gestured to a room that was surprisingly nice. 2 beds, a bathroom, and what appeared to be a television. This is a cell, Tommy asked. We are a civilized society, Trillix sniffed. We believe in humane detention. Can we at least send a message to our company? Darren asked. They're expecting this delivery. Your communication privileges will be restored once you have been processed and your cargo inspected. The door slid shut with a soft hiss. Tommy flopped onto one of the beds. Well, this is a fine mess. You think, Darren paced the small room, we're in some kind of forbidden zone, arrested for crimes we didn't commit, and nobody knows where we are. On the bright side, the beds are comfortable. There is no bright side. There's always a bright side. My mom told me that. Your mom also told you that eating paste builds character. And look how I turned out. Darren glared at him. They spent the next few hours in the cell, watching what turned out to be alien soap operas on the television. One show seemed to involve a love triangle between a sentient cloud, a crystalline being, and someone's spaceship. It was more entertaining than Darren wanted to admit. Eventually, Trillix returned with another alien in tow. This one was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between colors like oil on water. This is Magistrate Kelvin, Trillix said. He will determine your fate. Kelvin, Tommy perked up. That's a human name. It is a temperature scale, the magistrate said in a surprisingly deep voice. I chose it after studying your species. I find your measurement systems fascinating and arbitrary. That's fair, Darren admitted. Kelvin pulled out a data pad. You are charged with entering the forbidden zone, which is forbidden because it is where we store all of our most dangerous criminals and experiments gone wrong. That seems like important information to put on a sign, Tommy said. We have signs, 73 of them surrounding the jump gate. We didn't see any signs. They are visible on 16 different spectrums of light. We can only see one spectrum. Kelvin blinked all 3 of his eyes. That seems like a design flaw. We're working on it, Darren said. Look, this is all a big misunderstanding. We're just haulers. We took a wrong turn. If you let us go, we promise never to come back. What about your cargo? What about it? Commander Trillix tells me you are hauling agricultural implements. That's right. 15,000 tons of tractors, combines, and other farming equipment headed for Colony World designation Bravo 9 at 12. Kelvin's colors swirled faster. You have farming equipment? Yes, real farming equipment. As opposed to fake farming equipment. The magistrate turned to Trillix and spoke rapidly in a series of chirps and whistles. The commander's feathers went through several colors, finally settling on what Darren hoped was a pleased orange. Gentlemen, Kelvin said, turning back to them, we may have a proposition for you. We're listening, Darren said cautiously. The Concord has been attempting to establish agricultural operations in this sector for 6 cycles. However, we lack the proper equipment. Our technology is more advanced than yours in many ways, but we never developed efficient farming machinery because most member species either synthesize their food or import it from garden worlds. Okay, Tommy said slowly. We would like to purchase your cargo. Darren blinked. You want to buy our tractors? Yes, we will pay triple the market rate. And drop the charges. Naturally, we are not unreasonable. Darren looked at Tommy, who shrugged. There's one problem, Darren said. That cargo isn't ours to sell. We're just the haulers. It belongs to the colony that ordered it. Kelvin's colors dimmed. Ah, that is problematic. However, Darren continued, thinking fast, we could contact the colony and see if they'd be willing to sell it to you. For the right price, they might be convinced to order a replacement shipment. This is acceptable. Make your communication. They were escorted to a communications suite where Darren managed to get through to the colony administrator, a woman named Patricia who sounded like she'd been drinking coffee for 3 days straight. Miller, where the hell are you? She demanded. You were supposed to be here 2 weeks ago. Funny story about that, Darren began. He explained the situation, leaving out the part about Tommy not checking the coordinates. When he finished, there was a long silence. Let me get this straight, Patricia finally said. You got lost, ended up in a forbidden zone, got arrested by space birds, and now they want to buy our tractors for 3 times what we paid. That's the summary, yes. And you're calling to ask permission. Seemed like the right thing to do. Another pause. Miller, if you can get them to pay 3 times market rate, sell them the whole damn shipment. We'll order new equipment and still come out ahead. Hell, we might even expand the colony with the extra funds. Really? Really? Just get me the credits and get yourselves home safe. Darren grinned at Tommy. You hear that? We're in business. The transaction took most of the day to finalize. The Concord's banking system apparently involved 3 different types of currency, 2 verification councils, and one very confused accountant who kept insisting that humans shouldn't be able to do math without tentacles. By the time everything was settled, Darren and Tommy found themselves sitting in the station's bar, which served something that tasted like whiskey if whiskey had been filtered through a carburetor. To getting lost, Tommy raised his glass. To getting found, Darren corrected. They clinked glasses just as Commander Trilix walked up to their table, looking far more relaxed than before. I wanted to apologize, the commander said, settling onto a perch designed for avian species. We may have been hasty in our arrest. You think, Darren said, but he was smiling. In our defense, another human ship that came through this sector tried to sell us something called timeshares. That's actually a crime in human space too, Tommy said. Trilix's feathers ruffled in what might have been laughter. Your species is strange. You are simultaneously brilliant and ridiculous. That's pretty much our motto, Darren agreed. The magistrate has asked me to extend an offer. The Concord would be interested in establishing regular trade relations with human merchants. You would have exclusive rights to this sector. Darren and Tommy looked at each other. There's just one problem, Darren said. We have no idea how to get back here. We can provide you with proper navigation data and perhaps some signs that are visible in your limited spectrum. That would help. They spent another hour working out the details. By the end of it, Darren and Tommy had gone from arrested smugglers to official trade representatives of the Concord. It came with a fancy certificate. You know what this means, Tommy said as they walked back to the Rusty Pelican the next day. That we're going to be rich. Well, yes, but also that we're going to have to explain to everyone back home how we got lost and accidentally started a trade alliance. We'll leave out the part about you not checking the coordinates. I appreciate that. They climbed aboard their ship, which looked even more beat up next to the sleek Concorde vessels. Darren settled into the pilot's seat and began the startup sequence. Coordinates locked in, he asked. Tommy double-checked them. Coordinates locked in, triple-checked. Good man. The Rusty Pelican lifted off from the docking bay and turned toward the jump gate. This time, Darren noticed the signs. 73 of them, flashing in multiple spectrums. The Concorde had been kind enough to add human-visible versions that said things like, danger, forbidden zone ahead, and seriously, don't go this way, and Darren's personal favorite, we mean it, turn around. Hard to miss those, Tommy muttered. You think? They lined up for the jump, and Darren felt that familiar flutter in his stomach as the engines spooled up. In his 15 years of hauling cargo, he'd never imagined he'd end up as a trade ambassador. Then again, he'd also never imagined he'd get arrested by space birds or sell tractors to aliens. You ready? He asked. Ready as I'll ever be. Darren engaged the jump drive. The stars stretched into lines, and then they were hurtling through the void between spaces, the universe compressing and expanding around them in ways that made his head hurt if he thought about it too long. When they emerged on the other side, the navigation computer showed familiar constellations. Earth space. Home. We made it, Tommy said, relief evident in his voice. Of course we made it. I had my doubts. You always have doubts. The communications panel lit up with an incoming message from their company headquarters. Darren accepted it, and his boss's face appeared on the screen. Frank had the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years dealing with incompetent haulers. Darren, Frank said, where have you two been? You missed your delivery window by 3 weeks. We got lost, Darren said simply. Lost, very lost. And we sold the cargo for 3 times the market rate, established first contact with an alien government, and secured exclusive trading rights for all of human space in their sector. Frank stared at them. You're joking. Check your account. The credits should have transferred already. There was a pause as Frank looked at something off screen. His eyes went wide. Holy hell, that's real money. Told you. How did you manage this? We're just that good, Tommy said. Darren elbowed him. It's a long story. We'll tell you when we dock. You better. And Miller. Yeah, next time you get lost, try to do it on purpose. The transmission ended. Darren leaned back in his seat and allowed himself a small smile. They had enough fuel to make it to the nearest station, enough credits to retire if they wanted, and enough of a story that nobody would ever believe them without proof. So what do we do now? Tommy asked. We dock, we file our reports, and then we take a very long vacation. Sounds good to me. And Tommy? Yeah, next time check the coordinates. Already planning to. The rusty Pelican cruised through space, its hull rattling and engines wheezing, carrying 2 very lost and very lucky haulers back home. Behind them, in a sector of space that most humans didn't even know existed, the Concorde was already plowing fields with human tractors and planning their next order. And somewhere in the cosmic bureaucracy of the universe, someone was probably updating a regulation manual to include the phrase, general human nonsense, as an official violation. Darren figured that was as close to immortality as he was ever going to get, and he was perfectly fine with that. 3 months later, Darren guided the rusty Pelican through the jump gate, no longer bothering to look at the warning signs. They knew the route by heart now, and the Concordat guards waved them through without even running a scan. Another delivery of irrigation systems, Tommy said, checking the manifest, plus some seed drills and what the magistrate called the spinning blade things. Rotary tillers. Those two. They'd made 6 successful runs since that first accidental encounter, each one more profitable than the last. The Concorde had discovered they really enjoyed farming, and human agricultural equipment had become something of a status symbol among the outer rim species. Commander Trillix had even sent them a fruit basket last month, though the fruit had tried to escape twice before they managed to eat it. Station Perch appeared on their view screen, looking almost familiar now. Almost like home, if home was a purple space station run by aggressive space birds with a fondness for bureaucracy. You know what's weird? Tommy said as they began their docking approach. That we're having this conversation again. No, well, yes, but I was thinking about how we got here. One wrong turn changed everything. Darren considered that. Not just one wrong turn. You're not checking the coordinates, us having exactly the cargo they needed, Patricia being willing to sell all of it. So what you're saying is I'm a genius. That's not what I'm saying at all. They docked and completed the cargo transfer in record time. The Concordat had gotten efficient at receiving shipments, and Darren suspected they'd been practicing. Magistrate Kelvin met them in the bay, his colors swirling in what they'd learned was contentment. Gentlemen, excellent timing as always, Kelvin said. I have news. The Concord Council has voted to name you official friends of the Concord. It comes with diplomatic immunity and a parking spot. A parking spot? Tommy asked. A very good parking spot, right near the entrance. We're honored, Darren said, and meant it. There is one more thing. Kelvin pulled out 2 small badges that shimmered with the same color-shifting quality as his skin. These grant you unlimited access to Concord space. No more checkpoints, no more inspections. You are now as trusted as any member species. Darren took his badge and pinned it to his jacket. It felt heavier than it should, weighted with responsibility and trust, and the kind of friendship that came from mutual benefit and shared laughter over terrible soap operas. We should celebrate, Trillix announced, appearing from behind a stack of crates. I have procured something called pizza from your species recipe database. It required 17 attempts to get the cheese to stop screaming. The cheese screamed, Tommy asked. Your database did not specify which cheese to use. We selected the nearest available option. They ate the dubious pizza in the station's observation deck, watching ships come and go against the backdrop of distant stars. Darren thought about how 3 months ago he'd been a simple hauler worried about making rent. Now he was eating possibly sentient cheese with aliens who'd become genuine friends. So what's next? Tommy asked, echoing Darren's thoughts. Next we go home, file our reports, and plan the next delivery, Darren said. I meant bigger picture. Darren looked at his co-pilot, then at Trillix and Kelvin. I think we keep doing exactly what we're doing. Hauling cargo, making deliveries, building bridges between species one tractor at a time. That's surprisingly profound, Trillix said. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. They finished their meal and said their goodbyes. The rusty Pelican lifted off one more time, its engines still rattling, its hull still beat up, but now carrying two haulers who'd found something more valuable than credits. As they jumped back to human space, Darren realized he wasn't just going home anymore. He was traveling between two homes, two families, two parts of his life that had merged in the best possible way. Coordinates check, he asked out of habit. Triple checked, Tommy confirmed. We're good. Then let's go home. The stars stretched into lines, and Darren Miller, the hauler who'd gotten lost and found something better, smiled as the rusty Pelican carried them through the dark, heading toward whatever came next with the confidence of someone who'd learned that sometimes the best destinations were the ones you never planned to reach.